Hello and welcome to Men with Beards. I'm Man with Beards. Today I'm joined by Man with Beard.
I'm Jay's dad.
And we're going to talk about our favorite man with beard, Kurt Russell.
Yes, he's amazing.
In one of his funniest roles to date, Bone Tomahawk.
Yes, I love this movie. I went in cold. I mean, these days it's so hard to do that with any kind of movie.
Well, you're from Toronto. I'm assuming it's cold most of the year. Yeah, it's a more recent movie.
Yeah, 2015?
Yeah, and it's S. Craig Zahler, written and directed by him, who apparently has written books.
Yeah, he's written 5 books. I read Congregation of Jackals. He's actually like a really good writer. I mean, his scripts waver between movies, but he has really great lines in this book. There's a line, the moon was a clipped fingernail amidst a sea of cotton. So he's like really metaphoric
Very
in the way he writes.
descriptive and yeah.
But then he also writes about, husbands biting off the pinkies of their wives and men eating their tongues and stuff
That's
like that.
I haven't read his, I'm assuming he wrote books before screenplays?
Well, he's got maybe 20 unpublished or unpaid for screenplays that no one's willing to take, but he's got 5 books out. I think he's working on a new one. He's also in a band called Realm Builder. Which is like a heavy metal band.
Sounds like it'd be a band about D&D.
Maybe, well, this stuff kind of sounds like it's got that kind of fantasy element. It sounds kind of like 60s, almost psychedelic Britpop mixed with like Spinal Tap music, like Stonehenge by Spinal Tap. That's what it kind of reminds me of.
Brave men fall from their horses, arrows in their necks.
It's not my taste, but some people like it. And Jeff Harriott is S. Craig Zahler's partner in the band, and he does the soundtrack for Bone Tomahawk.
Oh, okay.
Both of them do it together. So Jeff Harriott and S. Craig Zahler do the soundtrack, and the music's really good. But yeah, I mean, the movie is basically, takes place in the town of Bright Hope, where 2 people...
Which turns out to be a very ironic title, or ironic name for a town.
True, especially after they leave it. Things aren't so bright, but I mean, any movie that starts off where the first audio you hear is buzzing flies is usually not a romping family film.
Yeah, well, that's the surprising, because I went into this movie not really know anything about it either.
Yeah.
And to find out that it was his first movie is like, I mean, it's like right out of the gate, like a fully formed kind of vision and style. And
shot in 21 days.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh
and,
my
and
God.
I think the takes were like the 2 or 3 takes per setup per shot. So
well, that's the thing too. Is like, yeah, first movie. It looks. I mean, it feels like if you take away. We'll get into spoilers, so we'll say watch the movie before watching this. But before you get to like the really grisly stuff, it feels just like a really kind of classic movie, even though it's brand new. Like the dynamic between all the characters and the. I guess this goes along with him being an author, is the very theatrical kind of dialogue.
Yeah, like he's got a descriptive mind. He knows what he wants, both dialogue and visually. But with actors like Kurt Russell, who's so seasoned.
Yes.
And you sort of, in a movie like that, he's just suddenly come into his own of what he should be, as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
was this the same year as Hateful Eight? I think
it was. It was.
So two beardy Kurt Russell Western movies in the same year.
And Bone Tomahawk ruined Hateful Eight for me, because I did not really like it very much.
See, I like Hateful Eight, and people have compared Zahler to Tarantino with the way he kind of writes. Not naturalistic dialogue.
Especially his other movies as well.
Yeah, even more so with his other movies, but very kind of theatrical. And
he was at one of the opening screenings of Bone Tomahawk. Tarantino was. So.
I think Zahler was. I assume he would go to his own screenings.
Sure, yeah. But he apparently really, really liked it. So.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like he's different from Tarantino in that his dialogue isn't as flashy, and it's also, they both clearly have kind of a love and take inspiration from like exploitation movies, and grindhouse movies, but where Tarantino kind of just takes literal things from those movies and recontextualizes them.
And I think Tarantino likes to kind of like riff on his own style a lot.
Oh yeah, he's very self-aware of
Yeah.
his place as a filmmaker.
Which I think can distract from the story a lot, specifically Hateful Eight, because in a lot of the scenes in the cabin, all I could see was the script.
Oh sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
And-
very flowery dialogue.
Yeah, whereas maybe not so much Zahler's other movies, but Bone Tomahawk is so efficient and economical.
Yeah, well, and it feels like it takes an inspiration from exploitation type
Yeah,
movies, but
yeah.
it's just making his movie kind
Yeah.
of, you know, maybe a little bit classier than those movies, but it's not like he's trying to rise above that type of material. He's just making his weird shit.
Yeah,
basically.
sure. And it is weird. I mean, even just dialogue alone is weird because it's he's using what you would think are old classic Western terms, right? So he's a big fan of Westerns.
You've been squirting lemon juice in my eyes since you came in here.
But I don't know if the words he's using or the dialogue he uses is sort of strictly, you know, late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yeah.
If you use that stuff, you'll spill from the saddle. I'm trying to prevent that accident.
Because he'll have lines like, going forward, Mr. Dwyer will ride Vanguard. You know, and it's like, okay, I better look that up. I don't know what that means. And it means you're going to ride, your horse is going to be ahead of everyone else so we can keep an eye on you. And one of my favorite lines is Kurt Russell, when he wakes up in the morning and he's about to have, you know, his meal in the morning, and Clarence, the bartender, comes in because of the incident that's happened and says, Sheriff, we've got an issue. And Kurt Russell says, why are you in my breakfast?
Why are you in my breakfast?
It's just such a great line.
Yeah.
And, you know, he pulls that off perfectly.
And then there's other lines of dialogue, or not necessarily lines, but exchanges between characters that feel almost like more modern, snappy, kind of like buddy movie, cop movie type dialogue.
Sure, yeah.
Just with the way the characters play off each other. So there's an anachronistic element to it, but
Yeah.
it flows completely with the kind of theatrical style of the movie too.
Yeah, talking about Kurt Russell again, I really like him. I liked him when I was a kid because I was a big fan of Big Trouble in Little China, and I didn't really know who he was. I just said he was this sort of kind of Han Solo, kind of cool guy, whatever. And I love that movie because he's not taking things too seriously. It's a fun action movie.
He has no idea what's happening throughout the entire film.
Yeah,
You could do a supercut of him just asking, "What the hell's going on?" That's the whole movie.
he carries it off. It's so great.
Yeah.
But you know, I'd see you as being more of a Thing fan for Kurt, like your big.
Yeah,
Kurt
well,
Russell movie.
Escape from New York is,
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
that's the two extremes as far as John Carpenter characters that Kurt Russell played. The
Yeah.
Thing is kind of right in the middle. He's just like an everyman.
And that's like sort of sci-fi horror, serious kind of Kurt Russell acting.
Yeah.
And you know, Big Trouble in Little China is like
The whole movie's like a joke.
yeah, it's like pretty goofy. But in Bone Tomahawk, I would say he's perfect.
We'll make sure all this has value.
Please do.
Yes, everybody's perfect.
I would agree.
It's a great cast.
Yeah.
Richard Jenkins, who I've always loved, and he's kind of always been like character actor man.
Yeah.
It's only, I don't know, what was his like breakout movie where people kind of started
Well,
to see him as a...
I mean, people knew him from 6 Feet Under because he
Oh,
played
okay,
the
yeah.
father who was a ghost. And
Okay.
He's in Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, well, character actor. He's been in every. I remember him from like the early Farrelly Brothers movies.
Yeah.
He would always have like one scene in all their movies.
Rest areas are homosexual hangouts. Highway rest areas. They're the bathhouses of the 90s for many, 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 many gay men.
Like Step Brothers. Like
He's
his
the dad.
comic timing is amazing.
Yeah, well, that's
he's so
it's-
dry.
In Step Brothers, that's like he's the dad. It's him and Mary Steenburgen, and he steals the movie from the two comedic leads.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that says more about him or it says more about Will Ferrell.
I don't know.
But
It seems like yeah.
I don't give a fuck.
well, that's the thing is like a lot of it up until I don't know 3/4 of the way through the movie when it starts to really introduce the more kind of horror aspects of the movie.
Yeah.
It feels like a very traditional Western, except for that opening scene. That's sort of like just your first glimpse that this is going to go in
Horror elements.
horror and fucking weird direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And it's shot from. It also doesn't prepare you for the violence because that opening scene, it's David Arquette and Sid Haig, who's in a lot of Rob Zombie's movies.
Right.
He's way in the distance, and you see him basically getting disemboweled.
Yeah.
but it's so far away that it doesn't really register.
He pulls the arrow from his throat.
Yeah.
And then you just sort of see in silhouette.
Yeah, and so you realize that these are savages, but you're not prepared for where the movie goes with them.
No.
But yeah, David Arquette, along with another person in this town's wife, who's the doctor, get taken by these savages. So then we have Kurt Russell and Chicory and this other group of characters that kind of go off on a mission to find these savages and rescue these characters.
Yeah, and it's Arthur O'Dwyer. It's his wife, the doctor that's been taken.
Yeah,
Arthur
that's Patrick
O'Dwyer,
Wilson.
Patrick Wilson, Night Owl.
At least I'm not the one still hiding behind a mask.
Oh, that's right. He's
Who I
Night
always
Owl. I
think
always
of
think of
him-
him from the Conjuring movies.
Oh, right, yeah. I always think of him as like sort of a non-comedic Paul Rudd kind of character. Because he's a very sort of straight man, but he's a very good actor.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a Kevin Costner element going on with him. But he's got a hard role to play because he's wounded. Because he fell off a roof because he's a construction worker or
Yeah,
something.
he's trying to fix the roof.
Of the Wild West. And his wife's a doctor, luckily, so she has him up in bed resting. And he has a difficult role to play because he's kind of playing this sort of impotent character that can't get around much, but he's also got, he's suffering the whole time. So
Yeah.
I think it was a real challenge for Patrick Wilson to do the role because how do you suffer through a movie without just sounding like you're complaining all the time?
Yeah, well, that's his sort of like determination and dedication,
Yeah.
like in spite of his leg, like he wants to go on, and the mission that they go on, things just keep getting worse
Yeah.
and worse, and he never lets up.
Yeah, and the horror of his leg elements, like they keep happening continually, are just
Yeah.
all very believable and very visceral
Yeah.
when you see it on screen. So it's Arthur O'Dwyer, Chicory, the backup deputy, Sheriff Hunt, played by
Santa Claus.
Kurt Russell. But my favorite character, I think my favorite character might be Mr. Brooder,
The Matthew Fox character?
Matthew Fox. And again, not until the very end did I realize it was Matthew Fox. And his character has a lot going on because his wife and child were killed by Indians.
Yeah.
And so he has a vendetta. And he's very arrogant.
You hear it jingle. Point your gun and shoot. I'll probably beat you to the draw, but don't count on me to save you.
He's very, intelligent, as he says. And
In a lesser movie, it could be a very one-dimensional character.
yeah, absolutely. And you think he might be that, but he's kind of got a lot of soul going on.
Yeah. Well, that's going along with the writing of the movie. Like, it'd be easy to do sort of like easy drama by having that character be the one that maybe betrays everybody at
Sure.
some point,
Which you're kind of
for selfish reasons.
You're sort of expecting that because there
Yeah,
are moments
exactly.
of that where it's like, is this guy going to mess things up for us on our search? But he.
But ultimately he's a good man. All these characters are like good men,
Yeah.
which is also interesting to see in a movie like this. No one's getting backstabbed.
Right.
It's very like it's very honorable in a
Yeah,
way.
and they bicker and at each other now and again, and
And that's some of the best stuff in the movie.
I'm the most intelligent man here, and I intend to keep us alive.
Oh, you're the most intelligent man here. Is that a fact?
It is. Sheriff Hunt has a wife. So does Mr. O'Dwyer. And you're a widower.
Yeah. What does that got to do with anything?
Smart men don't get married.
Yeah, and I've never really, I know Matthew Fox, he was on Lost. He was nobody's favorite character on Lost.
the heavy breathing.
he's just like Guy.
Yeah.
He's never impressed me as an actor, but he's so good in this.
Yeah,
It feels so genuine.
yeah, absolutely.
And also, I like the little detail of, again, with him being kind of arrogant and think he's better than these people. Like, whenever they're camped at night, he's always just a little bit farther away from everybody.
Yeah, for
They just
sure.
have these wide shots of everybody laying down, and he's always off a bit.
There's the scene in The Learned Goat where they're doing the search party. They're figuring out what they're going to do. It's a small town, so I think there is a conscience around everyone to help out as much as they can.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why Brooder goes along on the mission. But he's, he also has his arrogance where it's like, well, you guys aren't going to go very far without me, kind of thing.
Right.
But he makes the boast that he's killed 118 Indians, and the character, the professor, who is a native guy, he's the one that discovers these aren't Indians.
These aren't, yeah.
Yeah,
These are troglodytes.
Yeah, white men like you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
You're afraid of your own kind?
They're not my kind.
They're a spoiled bloodline of inbred animals who rape and eat their own mothers.
But these are troglodytes, cave dwellers, probably cannibals, you know.
How do you spell troglodyte?
But it's a great line. Brooder goes out the door, and the professor says, well, that's an ugly boast about killing 118 Indians. And he's like, not a boast, but a fact.
Yeah.
And then he goes out the door. And it's like, Matthew Fox handles that stuff so well.
And I've killed more Indians than everyone here put together.
Well, it's an ugly boast.
It isn't a boast, but a fact.
But the way it handles, like for the early part, when it's more of a kind of traditional Western, men going off on a mission, it's still very violent, but it feels, and it's like letting you know, like this is a world that is brutal and violent, but it still doesn't prepare you for where the movie's going.
No, but it keeps you engaged.
Yeah.
Like it's not like Westerns are boring. I don't know what's happening. I don't really care. Like there's always something.
But that idea that these are men living in a very violent time.
Sure.
It is just showing, even in that world where they're used to this kind of violence, they're still not prepared for, for what happens and where it goes. And it does a great job of building that sort of atmosphere, too, of being out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. The part when they get raided and Matthew Fox has to go put his horse down, there's that great shot from behind him with the three of them in the foreground, just in silhouette, and him walking away, and it's all really like misty, and it really has a sense of atmosphere that you don't see in a lot of it's definitely older Westerns, but even the more contemporary Westerns.
Thank you for your service.
S. Craig Zahler used to be a cinematographer on, I think, like lower budget movies. I don't know what any of them were, but for different friends and things like that. But when this movie was being shot, he wanted the landscape to progress. So it starts from green sort of sloping hills to flatter green land to like red land to
it's just like dusty rock.
To dusty white, almost primordial land.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's like primordial, like going back to like cave dwellers, right? So it's you know, Bright Hope to there is such a visual telling of the story, which is really just great storytelling, filmmaking.
Well, it also becomes more like in the early scenes in Bright Hope, especially like in the saloon. It's all shot almost like a stage play. All the master shots, they're very like kind of eye level, very flat. They stay back. A couple other like, I think like Patrick Wilson's bedroom, there's some stuff in there shot like that too.
Yeah, see that's a great scene to compare to Hateful Eight. And Hateful Eight is all theatrical, right? That really is a stage play. But if you notice in that shot, the camera is always like, no one's ever blocking anyone. They might pass by each other, but everyone's always in frame, and the shot keeps changing depending on who's talking.
Like I just told you, I ain't got no weapon.
Because you put them in that hole you dug.
One way that Zahler's directing the film is it's almost like dialogue directed. Who's ever speaking, there's a reaction. So it's always, the camera's always moving, following their dialogue from person to person to person, which is great, which just keeps me engaged.
Yeah, well that carries over to the action too, which is what I was gonna say, towards the end you get a little more, you know, handheld stuff, but there's still like when things calm down, like when they're captured by the savages, and they're in those little cages, and it's just that master shot. It kind of gives you the geography of the whole room they're in with that fire pit in the center of it.
The Bright Hope was and the majority of it was shot on the Paramount Ranch. So where like Gunsmoke, you know, was shot with, you know, 55 years ago, Kurt Russell was in that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know if Tombstone was shot on the ranch, but that was like 22 years ago, I think.
Sure.
Before the last time he did a Western. But the cave is the cave from Iron Man. So it's the Iron Man set.
Oh, really?
From the first movie. Yeah.
Oh my
so
God.
It's still kicking around. And still using it.
Well, that Paramount Ranch burned down last summer.
Why would you bring that up?
Well, as bleak and violent and horrific as the movie is, it does have this, not exactly hopeful ending, but it is, hey, all these men sacrificed themselves for something. Yeah. This wasn't completely worthless.
And the music reflects that, because it is kind of positive sounding. It's a retelling in a positive context.
Well, that's Matthew Fox has a line about that. Doesn't he say something like, I don't want this to be for nothing, or he has a line like that before he dies.
Yeah. before he gets his hand blown off.
Well, no, that's after he gets his hand cut off, but before, because he's like, I'm done for, leave me here.
Right.
And that's pretty shocking. All the violence is so like quick. It feels so like it never, again, comparing it to Tarantino, who kind of, makes cinematic violence fun in a way.
Right.
And this movie's just like, no, this is harsh and real. Things happen quickly. Like you almost don't even realize that's what happens to Matthew Fox at first. Like it looks like his hand maybe got injured in some way, but then you're like, oh, it's over there now.
Yeah, because he's like, Chicory, tie this off.
Yeah,
but
you don't even really
see it. It took like
it.
the fourth or fifth viewing to notice that his hand has been
it's over there somewhere.
And it's over there with a bit of a shirt sleeve.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the testament to like a good movie is rewatchability. When, after the fifth time watching something, that's when you notice the severed hand.
Yeah. Well, and also in just rewatching this movie, it's the middle chunk of it when they leave Bright Hope up until when they get to the Savages.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like, it's almost like a hangout movie. You just like sort of being with these characters.
Yeah, it's great. Sound design wise, in this film, things are really dry sounding. In Bone Tomahawk, things,
Well, it creates that dusty Old West kind of atmosphere.
Yeah, and
although he does use the squeaky door opening sound effect. We've used it tons of times on Half in the Bag.
Right.
It's used every time anyone opens the door to Patty's Pub on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Right.
That's one of those sound effects that needs to be retired.
So it was the stock sound effect?
It was the stock
it's like
sound
the
effect.
The crow in The Simpsons, the nuclear power plant.
There's a couple sound effects that need to be retired from movies.
That's interesting.
Crowd gasping sound, play that here.
Right.
That's another one that they need to stop using. But that's the only one. Everything else in the movie sounds great.
Yeah, and so one thing I read in an interview, he referred to like Dario Argento and just like that gory, wet sort of sound of gore stuff, and he stayed away from that, and it's super effective.
Yeah.
Especially in the end scene, which I guess we'll skirt around.
I'm not going to try showing that clip, or this video will be pulled from YouTube.
Yeah, skirt's a kind of steak, right? But it's dry. It's all dry.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. And I've never.
Well, it just feels so like I don't know what it would sound like to split a person in half and have their guts spill all over the inside of a cave. But I would imagine it doesn't sound like a Lucio Fulci movie.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like Ben Burtt and his wife's casserole. Like.
Yeah, exactly. Someone squeezing an orange.
But it's that stuck out for me because it's so dry. It's like the sound if you hear someone fall off a bike in real life.
Yeah.
You're not, or someone being punched or whatever. You're not hearing that, slapping watermelon sound or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When someone falls off a bike, it's just like.
Yeah.
Like it's just, but you see it and it's horrible, and that's what's happening.
Especially in this context of at that point in the movie, for these savages, like it's like us, carving a turkey. Like it's something that we just naturally do,
which is
not a big deal.
Yeah.
And so in this movie, it's just done so like matter of fact.
Yeah, they're so run of the mill about it, and even when they're eating the guy's leg or whatever, it's like I don't know if he's enjoying that. He's just kind of like, yeah, goes on.
But that's I guess since we're talking about this, the end of the movie is cowboys versus cannibals, which sounds like a cheapo exploitation concept. But by that point in the movie, we've built up to it so much with these characters that it never feels, again, like Tarantino kind of doing like over the top a celebration of cinematic violence. This just feels so stark and so real.
So you have better knowledge of this than I do. Is there any kind of genre of cowboys versus cannibals?
Not that I'm familiar with. There's cowboys versus dinosaurs.
Right.
There's the famous Valley of the Guanji with cowboys, lassoing dinosaurs. I've never seen anything like this. It's
is that with like stop motion?
Yeah, it's an old famous
Harryhausen
stop motion stuff. Yeah.
Cannibal movies aren't my thing, but in 2015, a movie came out that I really wanted to see. Also, same year as Bone Tomahawk. It was pushed back. I think it had come out 4 years earlier, or 2 years earlier, or something. But it was Green Inferno, and I was really excited about it. The trailer made me excited. I didn't
I
really
was
know.
gonna say why, as a cannibal movie, why you would want to see it. Was it the trailer?
The
you just thought looked
trailer,
good?
but
Okay.
I didn't know anything about Eli Roth beyond *Inglourious Bastards* and his cameo in that.
Yeah.
And I watched the movie, and I really hated it, and it was stupid, and the gore was dumb, and it was
See,
cartoonish.
I thought it was the funniest movie of 2015.
Sure.
It's not good.
But I think the perfect way of talking about my feelings on this movie was I got into an argument with someone about the ending of the movie, and I said I hated how it all ended up, that it was a dream, and she was back at college at the end, and everything was fine. And the person said, no, that's not how it ended. And I was like, yeah, that's like, because she was unfazed by the whole thing. And it turns out she's just not a very good actress.
It wasn't supposed to be a dream. She just wasn't very good in the film.
She just was unfazed.
Yeah.
Like people who go and help, third world countries and then go back to their lattes. But outside of that,
But that's another, Bone Tomahawk and Green Inferno are obviously two movies that are kind of inspired by cannibal films. There's a long history to like the Italian cannibal movies, the 70s and into the 80s, cannibal holocausts and stuff like that. But the extreme ways that you can be influenced by something, but create something that takes on a life of its own.
Yeah.
Green Inferno is like, I like cannibal holocaust, so I'm going to make a schlocky, terrible cannibal movie. And then you have someone like S. Craig Zahler is like, I'm going to take cannibal films and make something interesting and grounded and real out of it. And that's the thing. This like I said, the whole kind of subgenre of cannibal films, like I find them interesting as like a weird subsection of genre movies, but I remember an email I was talking to you about Cannibal Holocaust. And it was like, I find it interesting. I would never ever recommend you watch it.
Right.
A lot of them are very grotesque and not in the way that, like Bone Tomahawk gets kind of grotesque towards the end.
Yeah.
But
kind of.
But it's the first movie in a very long time where I literally, my jaw dropped at the violence. There's one particular moment that, again, we won't show, but it feels like it makes you invested more with the characters.
Absolutely.
Because you're seeing it kind of from their point of view and like, holy shit, this is real.
Outside of the ritual cattle scene in Apocalypse Now.
Oh yeah.
Outside of that, that's the most horrific thing I think I've ever seen.
Yeah,
so maybe I haven't seen enough films.
Well, that's a real animal being slaughtered in Apocalypse Now, which is another staple of the Italian cannibal movies.
Right.
Is actual animal murder. So if you don't want to see that, don't ever watch those movies.
Well, when I watched it again, I was like, I don't think I can watch this again. I love this movie.
The movie or just that
moment? No, that moment. I'll watch the movie again. But yeah, it just every time I watched it, it affected me. And I think the reason is because of Kurt Russell's acting. I mean, also the victim's acting.
I was going to say, the way it's portrayed,
it's
like hammering you over the head with the fact that this is a real human being.
You sent my possessions back to Michigan. Most of that stuff belongs to my brothers.
I'll send it.
Yes.
He's talking the entire time as they're like
undressing
him, hanging him up, and then Kurt Russell, something that kind of is the theme of the movie. He's like, oh, the cavalry's on the way, your death will not be in vain.
Yeah.
And then so it's like 1 minute he's a living, breathing human, and then the next,
And when that moment happens, you look, the camera goes back to Kurt Russell and he just does this.
Yeah.
And it's just deflated.
In that moment, how do you react to something like that?
In
an Eli Roth
as an
movie,
actor,
you would start
perfectly.
screaming over the top.
Yeah.
Or shit your pants, which also happens in that film.
And then everyone's grossed out.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's a comedy
Is this
now.
supposed to be funny?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lesser director would just kind of have it end there and them all be slaughtered or something. But in this film, we've still got Arthur Dwyer, who turns out to be the hero,
That's another thing, too, is like the movie is kind of bleak. So you see him, like he hurts his leg even worse. And he's like, go on without me. Maybe I'll catch up to you. You assume that's the end of his story. He's just going to die out there in the middle of nowhere.
But no, he finds the little, piece in their neck or what is it? So I'm thinking that's like an animal bone or something.
That's what it looks like it's some sort of...
And that over time they they figured out a use for it as a call to each other, and
Embedded in their neck.
yeah,
It's
And I love hearing that sound effect that is caused from. It sounds like coyotes or something howling off in the distance. When they do it up close, I don't love it so much. It kind of sounds like a vacuum cleaner or bad plumbing. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose.
It's scary and it's kind of cool and everything. It's just, it's not as realistic, I guess, as a lot of the rest of the film.
But it's so much more satisfying to see him kind of win in the end because, like I said, the movie was so bleak, you just assume he's going to die. So it feels more earned to have. It feels more, it's more like legitimately exciting.
Yeah.
The ending of the movie as opposed to it just ending very bleak.
He's vulnerable. And,
yeah.
And Kurt Russell has his hero moment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, they have that great moment too, where he's like, I'll say hi, say goodbye to my wife for me, and I'll say hi to yours.
It's beautiful.
It's a wonderful little, very surprisingly touching moment for the end of a movie about.
Yeah, that's another thing
cannibals.
with Zahler is, which I don't find in Tarantino, like to make the comparison, is you could call some of the moments sappy or overly sentimental, and I just think he handles it so well and balances them really nicely.
Yeah, well, they're never too over the top, and they feel earned.
Yeah, I think his domestic dialogue between partners, husband and wife in the living room kind of stuff, not his strong suit, and you see that in Brawl Cell Block 99 at the beginning. You see it with Mel Gibson and his wife in Dragged Across Concrete, and it's just, I just hear the dialogue.
Yeah.
And it takes me out a bit.
Yeah, I think it works better in like the Western setting because I think this is.
I like
when you have a
Brawl and Cell
contemporary.
Block.
I like all of his movies, but you have the more contemporary setting with that same kind of dialogue and the same sort of like weird interactions between the characters. It feels more stilted, I think, in his other movies because of the contemporary setting.
Yeah, everyone knows contemporary and domestic, so
it's not meant to be realistic, but it doesn't kind of feel as
clumsy.
It doesn't feel as kind of natural as it does in this movie.
Yeah, he's better at the stuff that we don't know somehow.
Yeah.
I think he's great. Yeah.
Thank you for verifying that.
It's a good movie. Bone Tomahawk.
Christmas Chronicles.
Good night.